Hello. Thanks everyone for hanging in. This is the Global Perspectives portion of the symposium. We have some really exciting talks ahead of us. So I asked that questions be held till the end. We've planned so that there's going to be some time at the end to ask questions. So the panel now includes representation from Europe, Australia, South Korea, China, and Brazil. I'll introduce the panelists one at a time, and then they can come and give their talk. So let's start with Dr. Peter Reinbeek. Dr. Peter Reinbeek is assistant professor at the Erasmus University Medical Center in Rotterdam, where he is leading the Health Data Science Group at the Department of Medical Informatics. His research interests include computerized analysis of the electrocardiogram, pattern recognition, machine learning, and predictive modeling using clinical data. He had a leading role in several large European projects related to secondary use of healthcare database. He is co-leading the European Health Data and Evidence Network project funded by the European Commission that aims to standardize a large amount of databases to the OMOP CDM in the upcoming 5 years and create a high-quality European data network. Peter is the coordinator of the European OHDSI Chapter that organizes a yearly symposium and supports the adoption of the OMOP CDM. So here to talk about his work,
yes. Dr. Peter. Let me a little bit up, I'm Dutch, so. Thank you. It's a great opportunity to talk to you about the situation in Europe. And it's always been great to work in Europe, but I think it's going to be even better in the next years because there's a lot of uptake of the OMOP Common Data Model in Europe. There are many databases that are mapped or in process of mapping. And there's a lot of interest of other data sources across Europe to join the community. Interest from academia to do research on the data sets and also pharmaceutical companies that are mapping their internal data sets to the OMOP CDM, which is great. What I really like is that there's also a lot of interest from regulators. So the EMA is very interested in using a common data model for Europe. And we had a nice meeting there at the EMA in December where we presented OHDSI and all our ideas. And I think, at least in my perspective, the OMOP CDM is the only solution that's out there now to do these studies in Europe. We are really in a perfect storm, and I'm very happy with that. It means that we can do a lot in the upcoming years, especially with the projects that we've been doing. But also because of the European OHDSI Symposium. We had the first one last year in March. More than 250 people joined that symposium, which was really fantastic. And the title of the symposium was Bridging Europe. So the aim was to bring together different stakeholders in Europe, databases that are in process of mapping or maybe interested in mapping, to join the initiative. What's great is that if you look at this graph, that of the 250 people that joined the symposium, more than half was completely new to OHDSI. They heard about it, they were interested in it, and they wanted to join the initiative. There are also quite a lot of people that are in the process of converting their data or were already contributing to studies that OHDSI was doing. We had a lot of posters as well, so 40 posters, which is quite a lot for the first symposium, I would say. And we did tutorials, which I think is very important, that we educate our community. Also happy to announce that we will have the second European OHDSI Symposium, March 29th, and tutorials on March 30 again in Rotterdam. So if you are close to Europe, please join us. It's going to be fun, and I'm quite sure that we will get bigger and bigger in Europe. One of the reasons why I say that is because I have the big opportunity to lead a big European project called EHDEN, European Health Data and Evidence Network. It's a project that will start in November and will take 5 years. It has a big budget, 28 million euro from out the IMI initiative. And what we want to build is really a trusted network for doing these type of observational research studies in Europe. We want to do that, and it's been decided that we will do that using the OMOP Common Data Model as our data model. It's a consortium consisting of 11 pharmaceutical companies and 11 public partners, including some SMEs who you may have seen here today, like the Hive and Odysseus, but also NICE and the European Patient Federation are part of our consortium, as is ICHOM. The nice thing of the EHDEN project is that within the budget that we have, there is a harmonization fund that's 70 million euro that's reserved just to do mappings of data sets in Europe to the OMOP CDM. And how that will work is that there will be open calls where databases can sign up to get their data mapped to the OMOP CDM with support from SMEs that are trained and certified to do that job. And part of EHDEN is also to train those SMEs to make sure that we get a certain level of data quality and standards in place. We will be building on all the infrastructure that OHDSI has been creating, Atlas and all the other tools, RACNI, but we also hope to contribute to the development of the tools from European perspective and build the evidence workflow that we need for our daily work. The end goal is not to stop at 5 years. So after the 5 years of the project, we should have a sustainable data network in Europe, supported by SMEs and others that want to contribute to building tools on top of the OMOP CDM. So in general, I think we are moving the train forward in Europe, and it's great that we step on a train that's moving very fast, and you've seen very nice presentations today, and we just want to bring that also into Europe, and I'm very happy that I can contribute to that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. That was very interesting, especially given all the diversity of countries in Europe. I think it's interesting how quickly adoption is picking up there. Okay, great. So the next panelist we have is Dr. Nicole Pratt. Dr. Nicole Pratt is a biostatistician and Deputy Director of the Quality Use of Medicines and Pharmacy Research Center, University of South Australia, and a Chief Investigator on the Center of Research Excellence on Post-Market Surveillance of Medicines and Medical Devices. Nicole is responsible for evaluating the Quality Use of Medicines Program, Veterans Medicines Advice and Therapeutic Education Service, Veterans MATES. Veterans MATES uses administrative claims data to develop and evaluate interventions to improve use of medicines in the veteran community in Australia. Nicole is also a member of the Drug Utilization Subcommittee of the Australian Government Department of Health Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee. She is a collaborator of the Asian Pharmacoepidemiology Network. So with that, let's pull up her presentation.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of the work we've been doing in Australia with OHDSI and how we're really trying to collaborate with the community and also build up our experience and research in the use of the Common Data Model. So when you think of Australia, most people think about fuzzy, cute animals, and I guess that's the way our healthcare system is. We have quite a good healthcare system. The trouble is Australia is also known for its deadly animals, and in a way our healthcare system and the way we collect our data is also, I feel, sometimes quite dangerous and scary. So the reason I say that is we're a country of many different states, and each of those states has responsibility for certain parts of the healthcare. So, for example, hospital data is administered by the state governments. Medication data and outpatient services, so general practitioner visits, are all federally funded. So all of that data is owned by the Commonwealth Government. And unfortunately, to get those two things to talk together, we have to implement linking. And it's usually probabilistic linking. We don't have a unique identifier in Australia. And again, you can see where the issue with that lies. So Australia has been trying, in the last little while to really try to bring together all these data sets. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare is an accredited integrating authority, which means it's able to sort of combine data sets across jurisdictional boundaries and federal boundaries. There's coordinating centres for these cross-jurisdictional linkages, different companies that do this. Oops, I've missed there should be a symbol up there for the Department of Veterans Affairs, which collates all data for all veterans across all jurisdictions and across the Commonwealth as well. And in the last year, we've had this kind of revelation in Australia by introducing My Health Record. So the My Health Record is a personally controlled electronic health record that does combine all these data sets, but the key to that is that's personally controlled. It's an opt-out system, and you can decide which part of your data is visible and to whom. So my experience with implementation of OMOP CDM in Australia. So we have a 10% sample of the Commonwealth data, the MBS PBS data, and we were able to translate that into the OMOP CDM and participate in a network study around medicine use in children, which was a great experience to both create the CDM and use the CDM to help generate evidence. Again, that should be a symbol of the DVA there, which hasn't come up. So the DVA dataset is the dataset I work with most exclusively, and we're actually preparing to translate that into the OMOP CDM. We've also got the Australian Orthopaedic National Joint Replacement Registry, which we've been able to link to Commonwealth data as well, and I'm hoping, and I've proposed to translate that. That's a data set of about 1.5 million patients over 14 years in Australia. So the opportunities for implementing OMOP in Australia, the big thing for me is the program that I helped to run, which is called the Veterans MATES program. So the DVA dataset is a small dataset in the scheme of things for Europe, but it is quite a rich data source for us. It's an elderly population of veterans and their spouses, 130 million prescriptions over 15 years, and lots of GP visits, and all the hospitalisation records, both public and private. So we run the Veterans MATES program, which uses administrative data to improve primary care practice for veterans. We do targeted interventions to improve medicine use in the community. And there's been a couple of examples I've put up here around management of diabetes. So we aim to reduce inappropriate use in patients with diabetes, aim to promote appropriate medicine use in increased care services, and look at patients newly diagnosed and their management of their diabetes. So the MATES approach, every 3 months we target a health intervention. We contact the GP, the veteran, all the healthcare providers for that veteran. And so far we've delivered over 50 interventions over 40 years and targeted just about every veteran and every doctor in Australia. So we use claims data to both plan our interventions to work out what is a problem in the veteran community. We develop interventions, we provide feedback to the GPs, to the veterans about their care, and then we evaluate practice change that has come about because of our intervention. So the opportunities for OMOP in this process is throughout the life cycle. The population utilisation, analysis, treatment pathways to identify problems, patient profiles and patient-level prediction to target those veterans most at risk of harm with their medicines, and also looking at health outcome studies to evaluate whether or not we've made significant practice changes. And so really the Veterans MATES mission is the OHDSI mission. It's to improve health by providing evidence that promotes better care decisions and better health. Also part of ASPEN, which is the Asian Pharmacoepidemiology Network, and we've used a process which has now come to the common data model. We first started out with a common protocol, then we went to a common analytic program, and then a common data model. And we've published one study using a common protocol that was published just this year, started in 2009. So it took a long time in the process. Common analytic program, we've been able to generate lots of evidence, and now we have the common data model in the ASPEN network. So future directions and challenges. The future directions, I think, is to provide evidence on large-scale problems. One I've proposed is to look at large-scale evidence generation of biologic medicines, and hopefully that will tie into the legend we saw this morning. And also, I'm a biostatistician, so I'd like to help out with the methods library, looking at cumulative exposures or long-term exposures. So challenges, everyone will have the implementation, particularly for us is our medication codes. The adoption has been quite challenging. We're a very secure society in Australia, we're very private. That's been one of the biggest issues, and of course the fragmented data sources. And one of the main challenges for me is time zones. It's crazy. So I would just like to shout out to the Eastern Hemisphere teleconferences, and any of you who are not in this time zone, please join the Eastern Hemisphere teleconference. They've been absolutely invaluable for me and my learning. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Nicole. That was really interesting, all the different populations and the challenges that you outlined. So the next person that we have, the next person we have is Dr. Rae-Woong Park. Professor Park is the director and professor of the Department of Biomedical Informatics at Asia University School of Medicine, South Korea, and chairman, board of directors of the Korean Society of Medical Informatics. Dr. Park is an active international collaborator of OHDSI. He is now leading the Korean OHDSI community and devoting himself to convert 42 of the largest Korean hospitals' EHR data, as well as the Korean National Health Insurance claims data, into the CDM. By the end of 2018, more than 10 million Korean patient data from participating hospitals are expected to be available to the community in the OMOP CDM format. He has been invited for presentations in almost 300 times during the last 4 years in Korea, and now almost all of the physicians know or have heard about the CDM and OHDSI thanks to him. So,
thank you for presentation. Okay, I would like to introduce three progress in Korea. Now I am leading the FEDERNet, the Federated eHealth Big Data for Evidence Renovation Network. This is a government-supported project. We received $44 million from the government and $6 million from the private sector. And this is a 3-year project. Now we have 42, the biggest hospital in Korea joined to our consortium. And so the included patient data covers 55 million. That means the whole Korean population. And we try to support to make the extension model, including the radiology, imaging, or biosignal, or genomic data. So we try to make them. Now 10 research institutes joined to our consortium, and 8 companies work together. This is the data partners. As you see, most of the big hospitals in Korea joined to our consortium, and 10 institutions and 8 companies in Korea joined to our consortium. Although I blocked the name of the hospital, as you see, there are big hospital. I think this is the mistyping. I said 2,300. This hospital, about 2,000 beds. So as you see, most of the hospitals are very big hospitals, and as you see, the data started from the 1994 to the current, so it is a very comprehensive. And as you see, the EHL data have the red test result, and they have the very specific time stamp on the data, so the value of the EHL data can be very unique and valuable. So, okay, that's our data network. And with our fund, we provide every service to the hospital for free. That means we provide the hardware, software, and all the ETL process and all the maintaining process for free to the hospital. So that's the reason why so many hospitals join to our consortium. And now we have 6 ETL team, and by the end of this year, we believe at least 6 to 10 hospitals data will be converted into OMOP CDM and available to the community. So I hope it can be a good contribution to our consortium. And next year, we will the ETL team may increase to up to 10 ETL teams. So basically, our goal is converting 42 hospitals EHL data into OMOP CDM by the end of 2020, but I believe we can finish it more earlier. So I hope it. Second progress is ILV review models in AHDSI Korea. The two hospitals, Jeonbuk National University and Aju University Hospitals, ILV, recently decided like this, that the ILV will control when the internal researcher is involved in the study, as also are co-authors. As you see, we are using the pseudonymized data, so most of the ILV will be exempted because we use such kind of the pseudonymized data. And ILV will not control when the research study only consists of researchers from other institutions. That means when some research requests come from other hospital and the data partner only joins as the hospital only join as data partners, then they will not require any ILV review or ILV exemptions. So this is a very big progress for our community, and I believe that these two hospitals are opinion leader in the ILV area. So I believe the participating other 40 hospitals will follow this guideline. And third one is the future plan in AHDSI Korea. Now the Korean government preparing another new CDM project that started at 2019. It consists of 4 governmental projects, and grant. We still need the approval of the National Assembly, but the grant amount, we believe that ranges about $40 million for the next 4-year new project. It consists of 4. The first one is the national CDM. That means now the government has 4 institutions owned by the government. One is the HERA, the Health Insurance Review Agency. They have the whole claim data of the Korea, and the NHIS is the national insurer. They have all claim data, so they will convert their whole claim data into OMOP CDM, and they will also support the researchers who want to use the CDM data for the public purpose. So they will. I heard that they will provide about 20 new research grants for the researchers. And the third one is we will expand the data partners. The feeder net is mainly consists of the tertiary or teaching hospitals, but in the next new project, we will provide the support to the secondary hospital. And I believe that at least 40 to 80 hospitals can be joined to our consortium, and we hope we can use the cloud platform instead of the private cloud. And the third one is the business support. That means the companies who want to develop new algorithm or business model on the OMOP CDM, we try to support them to develop the kind of the algorithm or business model. Okay, I think this is my end of presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the wide adoption of OMOP in Korea is really very impressive. Okay, next up we have Mui van Zandt. Mui is the Director of Product Development at IQVIA, managing the OMOP Factory. Mui's area of expertise includes software development, data conversions, agile process, and project management. The OMOP Factory has been performing OMOP ETL conversions on over 12 different data sets in 6 different countries. Mui has gained extensive knowledge working on large patient databases in the OMOP model and the standard vocabularies that are needed to support these conversions. Mui is an active contributor to the community through various OHDSI working groups. She is one of the co-leaders of the China OMOP CDM/vocabulary working group. She leads 2 of the sub-working groups within the Themis, working group. She has and continues to perform OMOP tutorial trainings to many different organizations and conferences, such as the OHDSI Symposiums, the China Hackathons, and individual universities. So here representing China is Hui.
Good afternoon. I'm here to talk to you guys about OHDSI China. So OHDSI China started not too long ago, in 2016. When we first started our first meeting, we had about 55 people in an online conversation. Our overall goal is very similar, of course, to the overall OHDSI, and it's to promote healthcare observational studies in China through data science and informatic approaches. To be a little bit more specific, we want to be able to enhance the OHDSI CDM as well as the vocabularies to do things that only China has, like traditional Chinese medicine, as well as take software such as Atlas and make it usable for the Chinese community, because we do use a different language than English that uses characters. We're trying to enable some big data investigation, because we do have a lot of data in China right now. It's really not utilized much at all. And we want to be able to promote collaboration on an international platform and not just within China. Okay, so who are we? Because there's quite a few of us. So we have formed 6 different sub-working groups. We have a very similar one to the overall global one, a CDM and vocabulary working group. What we do there is actually look through the current CDMs and figure out whether or not there are some stuff that the US community or the China community doesn't have or has that the non-Chinese community doesn't have, and can we add to the CDM. As well as we are working on a lot of extensions to the vocabulary. Statistically, if you were at one of our posters, you'll see that about 50% of the drugs do not map to RxNorm or RxNorm's extension. And that's only on 10 of our sites, which is probably maybe 0.0010% of the data that actually exist in China. So there's a lot of work there that we have to do to extend the vocabulary so that it will work with Chinese data. We have a data analysis working group. They're working on trying to take some of the methodologies that are already built in the OHDSI community and utilize that and teach that in China. We also have an NLP group as well, because again, there's a lot of clinical notes, but all in Chinese characters. So being able to use the technology that's already built and translating that to work on Chinese data. We have software folks. Like I said, Atlas is a great tool, but it's all in English, and many of the clinicians in the hospitals don't really speak English or read English. Privacy, we're trying to get the data in a format where it can be shared, and at this point in time it can't, because it's really all private and inside hospitals. And we're trying to get a lot more community engagement in China. China is a very, very big organization or country. And it's very hard, and every province has its own rules and regulations. So we have to have a community and an engagement team that can reach out to all the different provinces and work with the different provinces. Like I said, when we first started, there was only 55 members. We now have more than 300 participants that comes from many different facets of the industry. We have academic, we have government, we have industry people. Again, what do? I kind of went through this. I skipped this slide. Okay, I know most of you guys are staring at me. It's like, what in the world is she doing in this dress? Right? Only person in here with a traditional Chinese dress on. Okay, little fact about this dress. It is actually custom made specifically to fit me and only me. And it was custom stitched. So every single pattern on here, someone went hand stitch by stitch, needle by needle, and threaded this thing together. Okay? That is the vocabulary in China. Every hospital has their own system, has their own unique set of codes that we, as the OHDSI vocabulary team, as we continue to OMOP these data assets in, will have to manually hand stitch all that together. So what we're trying to do is to build some systematic way to do this so this can just be done by machine. And that's where our machine learning processes come in when our NLPs kick in. And we are nowhere near getting to that perfected yet. But we have tried that. And this is a paper that we've written, and it's on JAMA, that talks about how to standardize and normalize clinical drugs, just drugs, okay, to a standard in China called NCCD. And ultimately, how can we take that and standardize that to RX norm? Okay. Again, another example, a lot of you guys have heard about the OHDSI study that we've done on treatment pathways, right? So and you guys know this, that Japan was a little different, where the United States and UK, everybody took metformin, but Japan was kind of all over the place. Well, we tried to duplicate that in China as well. And look, it looks very much like Japan. It's kind of all over the place. So these are some of the activities that we are doing, and this is something that's also under review for a paper that we're going to publish. So again, we're trying to take all the stuff that we're doing, that the OHDSI community is doing, and bringing it towards China. Now, how do we do that? Of course, just like here, we have symposiums. So the last year, we had 2 symposiums in a row. In 2017, we had it in Hangzhou, which had 180 people. This year, we had it in Guangzhou, which included 500 people with 2 days of tutorials, all in Chinese. That was not easy to do, because I can't really speak Chinese that well, but I had to. We also do what we call hackathons. So every quarter, we will actually do a hackathon in a province to try to help educate the academias, the governments, and just the people in those provinces of what OHDSI is, what OMOP is, and how, if you use this, how it can benefit you. So we had our first one in Shanghai, and the turnout was great. We had about 85 people for 3 days hacking away at actually coming up with protocols and figuring out what it is that they can use the data with. We actually had half of the crew being Koreans. We're having another one in November in Beijing on the 10th and the 11th. And then again, we will have one every quarter next year. We have a monthly online meeting that happens every second Friday. Coincidentally, that one will be tonight at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if anybody wants to join us after the reception and after all your partying and drinking, and at 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. get on a call to talk about OHDSI, let me know. Okay. We have a WeChat group that continuously provides live updates, like somebody's probably taking a picture of me right now and posting it onto that WeChat group, and we have a website. So feel free, join us. Anybody's welcome. You don't have to be Chinese. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Marie. That was a very engaging and fun talk. So last, but certainly not least, we have Brazil. So with us for representing Brazil is Andre Balalai, and he has over 10 years of pharmaceutical and biotech industry experience. He currently works at IQVIA, where he started and developed the Real World Insights department. He has been part of more than 100 regional and local engagements in areas such as market access strategy, real-world evidence, and longitudinal patient data analysis. He currently leads the market access, health economics, outreach, outcomes research, real-world data, advanced analytics, and real-world evidence backend services teams in Brazil. His areas of expertise include the market access, healthcare policy, Latin America healthcare systems, health economics modeling, and real-world data.
Moi, thanks for wearing the unique person with this. I feel more comfortable being the unique Brazilian here, right? So probably I'm the only person from Brazil. So the idea here is probably would be the first day of the OHDSI collaboration in Brazil. So we were talking about to start and to establish the collaboration there. I want to bring to you the advancement that we are doing to make data available on the OMOP CDM, right? So firstly, Brazil, trying to explain where we are. So Brazil has two different healthcare settings, a public and universal one that you can mimic being somehow like the NHS in the UK, and a private setting one that's somehow like the US, HMOs and healthcare insurance, right? So public setting is universal, but 25% of population have a healthcare insurance that generally is funded by private company and employers, right? So there's different levels of data available in Brazil. There's drug consumption, there are claims data, there are integrated claims data, and then there are EHR. The Brazilian government made public available all the claims data of the country. So we are covering almost 75% of the population. This is public available. What's the big problem? Fragmented, not integrated, and does not like have a common data model. So where's the opportunity? Bringing this for the OMOP CDM. So what we are working right now is trying to bring the claims data available from the government and the integrated claim data system. So right now there's 4 or 5 different healthcare information systems with around 27 different databases that covers the population, like oncology databases, radiology databases, medicines databases, hospital admission databases. So all different, one fragmented and not integrated, right? We do have EHRs there, but like it's fragmented, there's not like available, public available EHRs. It will depend on the ethics committee's availability and approvals, right? So what is the history of this? In the 80s and the 90s, so the government started, it was like the population insurance, public insurance. So it's a claims administrative data set. On the 2000 and 2010s, starting to integrate the data, and by transparency information laws, it became public available. And right now, from 2011, we as a community start integrating the data. So there's a lot of people working with trying to integrate. We're using record linkage, probabilistic matching data. From 2015 on, the number of publications trying to integrate this data has increased. Again, government, academia, providers trying to integrate the data. And this year, we start translating these claims data for the OMOP CDM data, common data model, right? And we expect to have by the next year the first results of the database integrated and translated to the common data model. So what are our plans? So there are 5 main systems of information: mortality, birth, so where we have like information from children and mothers, notifications information system like vaccinations, dengue, HIV, this kind of information, and the 2 main ones, hospital information system and ambulatory information system. They're not integrated. So we're going to start with the ambulatory system, and then we're going to move for the hospital information system. Just as a matter of fact, so what's the size? We have around 100 million patients there, 10 years of information. This is very large. Claims data, hospital admissions data. There's a common table of procedures that you're going to translate for the CDM. It starts from the 2008 on. There's data before, but it's not on an integrated format. So we have like 10 years of data. We have like 100 million of patients there. They can track. This is longitudinal. Ambulatory system is patient-centric. There's like a anonymized encrypted code for patients. Hospital admissions, not patient-centric, is procedure-centric, but there's record linkage algorithms that we can match patients based on their birth date, based on their gender, zip code, procedures, and that's the big challenge here. How can we craft all this? Because if you try to integrate the whole system, matching rates is going to go down. So sometimes you need to go cohort-based. So you define a cohort, run record linkage algorithm, and then you translate for CDM. This is a big challenge. So I want to show what we can do with this, and how can we move these algorithms and translate to common data model and go try to translate this algorithm to Atlas. We replicate a study that was firstly run in 1985, the exactly year that I was born, in which they try to evaluate how mortality rates change based on the distance the patient was from the hospital. But at that time, in 85, they just calculate the distance. So we have patient zip code, we have treatment center zip code. And we have outcomes, we have mortality outcomes, we have the healthcare facility information, number of physicians, if they have like a percutaneous service there. And then we use Google Maps to try to find not only the distance, but the time. So being 100 kilometers far does not mean that you're going to be 1 hour there. It could be on the countryside. It could be like different place. So we run this kind of study for the whole population. So in 5 years, all the acute ischemia, stroke, or the myocardial infarctions that happened in Brazil in the public setting. There's a lot of patients. So we try to evaluate these and the reduction of mortality rates based on being more or less than 1 hour from a hospital. So this is the kind of information and the kind of study we can do using the Brazilian data. So where we are right now in terms of challenges, translate the data, right? But I think establishing an OHDSI community there, try to engage not only people that are working with the data, but try to engage more hospitals for EHRs, try to engage the governments, try to engage the academy, and translate several algorithms that people are already running, because there are a lot of people working in Brazil with this. So try to bring people to the community and try to establish a collaboration that is not only for like making things, but like to increasing the data quality in Brazil. So that's it. Thank you. It's my contacts.
Thank you. Thanks. Oh, thanks. Thanks to all of our panelists for some great presentations. We have a little bit of time for questions, so if you have a question, please line up.
So I'm curious for the panel. We've heard a lot of talking about data integration, and that certainly is the place that we start as a community. I'd also love to know what insights you have on the ways in which the different contexts that you're practicing and you're integrating from are likely to affect the evidence generation, and how might we have to take that into account in terms of analytics, even presuming we can get the terminology and the structures aligned across regions.
Answer?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. Actually, something that we will struggle with in Europe for sure, because all countries will have different ways of defining diseases, and I think we're not there yet. We should create some type of phenotypic library where we can see its sensitivity analysis and see what the effect is of the choices that we make. So getting the structure right and having the terminology right is a big part of the problem, but not the full problem. So I agree with you, and we need to have also tools in place to compare different ways of defining phenotypes and then assess the effect of that on a specific study.
I might also pass that on. Might also add to that.
You have to turn it on. It's at the top.
You can use mine.
Is that better? No. I'll just use this one. Just add to that, and there's a second step with all of that. We can get the data integration looking great and perfect, but we really need to understand the cultural differences as well across our different data sets and how things are just done differently in different countries, in terms of how healthcare is provided, how they use particular medicines, what they use those medicines for. So I think there's two steps to this data integration, and a lot of it is cultural as well.
For Brazil, I think the challenge is that We're actually a continent, not a country. We have 26 states, different ways of thinking. In one hand, we have a single payer, the government, generally, and generally evidence is generated based on payments, on bundles. So somehow we will always carry this bias in terms of how the bundles are defined. But on the other hand, as you go down in the municipality level, in hospital level, basic system level, primary care, the municipalities can do healthcare in the different ways. And then probably the way they report information, the way they understand their information. And then we see a lot of these in rare disease, for instance. Until the patient gets like severe, nobody knows what it is. So it's a different way of reporting ICDs. But I think the challenge is like making people understand that how important to report in a standard way. But like Brazil has Belgium and has like India and has like US and different countries. It's hard to make people think in the same way.
And I think that regardless if in China or anywhere else, the same problem exists, right? I mean, even in the United States, we have the same problem. So to Peter's point, we have to look at standardization. So cohort definitions or analytic packages that are standard that the OHDSI community can put in the library, and then publish that everybody can use. And every country or every data asset, regardless of OMOP or not, we're still going to have to understand a little bit of its characterizations, because every data asset, regardless of a country or even within the same country, is going to have its unique little thing, regardless how perfect we are with our OMOP conversions.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. Kristen?
So I learned this year, I'll admit my own ignorance, I learned that SNOMED is actually not that global, and it's quite prohibitive in its licensing. And I'll admit my own ignorance here. I'm curious to know from the panelists how obstructive that licensing is for their own implementations. And for those of you who don't know, it actually costs a lot of money in some countries to use this vocabulary, which I only learned this year because it started to come up on the forums. So thank you to those who put that on the forum.
So I can speak to that. Yes, it's extremely challenging because China does not have a license. So for us, when we're trying to talk to people about the OMOP model and saying that there's one standardization, and they go, what is it? SNOMED. I can't use that. I don't even know what in the world it is. So for us, it is quite a big challenge. So we are working with some of the organizations within China to see whether or not they can license it. And I know that the OHDSI community itself is also working with SNOMED to see whether or not there's some workaround that we can do to get a license for China. But it is very expensive, and at this point, it is a big issue for the OHDSI and OMOP in China.
Okay. Does anyone else want to?
For in Korea, we are also not subscribed to the SNOMED city, so the total amount for the country is about $700,000 US. So we are considering whether we can pay all of them, or for just one hospital, it's only $2,000 US. So we are thinking which one is more efficient for worse.
Great. Any other thoughts? Okay. Next question, please.
Hi, it's Kees van Bokhoven from The Hive. Fantastic to see the spreading global coverage of OHDSI. I think it's a very unique example of a global community. Last week I was at the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health meeting in Basel. They're also trying to be global. For example, African genomes are very important for genetics. As we expand on the global reach to understand how health and disease really can work with global scale data, I'm very curious on your perspective, including genomics data. We saw a few examples today, for example, from Asan, in that direction. So maybe the panel can expand on this.
Yesterday, I think you may attended the genomic working group that was held yesterday, that led by some the prominent researchers in the community. So basically, I'm not familiar with the genomic data, but I think we have to include it. But the raw data cannot be included in the OMOP CDM because it's too big. So our approach is just including the mutation or the annotation value only. So I think we have to make some point the balance between the data volume and the value of the data.
Any other thoughts? Okay. Thank you. Next question.
So OHDSI is uniquely poised to do a lot of things and is already doing great things in population level estimation and patient level prediction. What this panel really brings home is another area that there isn't as much work in, and I'm interested in the panel's thoughts on policy as a major determinant of health outcomes around the world. The breadth of representation around the world is, and within different regions of the world, is really striking. And the ability to correlate health outcomes, how health is delivered, and all of that to policy seems like it might be a major focus of the OHDSI community in a way that it hasn't been yet. So that's, I guess, a proposition that I'm interested in the panel's thoughts
on. As you see, my background, I come from the policy in the market access and health economics, right? So I'm not coming from the clinical background. So, for instance, the study that I show you, actually one of the outcomes was helping the Brazilian government to try to deploy which cities needs an ambulance and which cities need thrombolytics within the ambulance. Because like if you are like more than 1 hour far from a treatment center, probably you need acute and emergency medicines within that ambulance. But if you're not, you don't need to spend that kind of money there. So I think like in one hand, there's a lot of value of like understanding disease and understanding its patterns. But on the other hand, as we go global, we start being able to compare and to make better decision makings in policy, right? So in a country level. And actually you don't need like, okay, Brazil has the lucky to have almost censitary data availability. But you don't need this kind of volume of data. Cohorts can be like extrapolated, can be enriched in a T-shaped level, what we call, to make better decision making on healthcare policy, right? Governments should be also exchanging information, and they can like exchange better policy decision making using this kind of data.
Yeah, I would add to that. Is that on now? Yeah. That Australia is very proud of its national medicines policy, and all of the work that I do in terms of the Department of Veterans Affairs or for the Drug Utilisation Subcommittee is to support that policy and to make sure the right person gets the right medicine and it's available and it's used in the correct way. So I think OHDSI and generating evidence really should support that policy and working with governments and regulators and is going to be a really important part of OHDSI to get that work translated into improving health for everybody in the community.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Usually policy, to make a policy, it requires a lot of resources and time. But we by using the OHDSI platform, especially in Korea, because most of the Korean hospitals joined in this community, so we can make such kind of evidence quickly and easily, so we can help the making the better policy based on our OHDSI tools.
Well, I think in China, RWE is really new. I mean, they've collected a lot of data, but the use of it is extremely new. So there, in the future, is going to be a lot of impact of the policymakers seeing the data of all the different rules that they've put in place, like insurance, or what people get and what people take after they get a certain disease. Because today they don't know because there's not any evidence to help them decide whether or not things are right or wrong. So I think the OHDSI community can play a big role in that by helping build what we just talked about, standards and analytics that then they can use across all the different provinces, because every province has their own regulations too on top of that. So it would be very helpful from an OHDSI's perspective to go in and help these policymakers validate their policies.
Yeah.
And just to amplify a little bit on the source of my question, I guess if it were to become a major focus, I think one of the challenges would be to begin some community-wide effort to document policies as they exist, and maybe that's large P policies that exist at a major government level that are determining incentives and care models, and small P policies about how care is delivered. But that, in order to compare the impacts of policies, we'd have to start doing things that enable us to really understand how those how many different kinds of policies differ across the community in ways that we haven't heretofore. I absolutely agree that the existing work is going to be very informative for people who are trying to develop policies. I meant more work that's comparing the effects of policies themselves on things.
Using our example, 2 months ago, a group of guys in Brazil published a study. They compare all the cities. Brazil has 505,000 of cities, lots of cities. They're trying to find what makes a policymaker, municipality level, a good one. So they use artificial intelligence for that to separate every access to health care, GDP, and then to try to find what make a policy good. And they find that, for instance, using real-world evidence and artificial intelligence, that investing in basic assistance makes things happen instead of expending lots of money on specialty care or this kind of stuff. So you can compare policy, and real-world evidence certainly is a way of.
Great. I think we have time for one last question, so please.
Thank you. It will be a short question, don't worry. So, my name is Dimitri, and my team is working on vocabularies. So, if I'm hearing something or seeing something that is challenging, mapping challenging, I always pay attention. So, I have a question for Nicole. Nicole. So, what are the problems with AMT? So, as I know, AMT drags them up to RX norm or RX norm extension, and procedures and conditions are part of SNOMED. So, what challenges did you meet there?
So we had challenges until we realised there was this AMT. Is that? Oh, it's not bad. So we had challenges converting to OMOP CDM from our pharmaceutical benefits scheme item code, and then we have the AMT. That's quite new for us. So that challenge is now solved, I think, with the AMT. So we're working at home on trying to translate our data to that. One of the problems we have is that in the veteran community, there's many medicines that are available to them that have not got a PBS item code. So we've got a whole heap of medicines that aren't listed anywhere that we'll need to translate individually. So the AMT has been a solution for us.
So we investigated that there are 1,500 new procedures in AMT comparing to international SNOMED. So do you need it to be added?
Procedures, sorry?
Procedures, yeah, the new procedures.
I'm just working on medicines at the moment.
On
I'm not there yet. So I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
but we'll post it on the forum once we get to the procedures.
Yeah, let's talk in the forum,
Absolutely.
of course. Okay, thank you.
Thank you to our participants, and great presentations and great discussion. Thank you, everybody.